Sex and happiness both enrich our lives, yet it's surprising how few people can honestly say that they enjoy regular and fulfilling sex or describe themselves and their lives as happy. Host Laurie Handlers helps you to experience real intimacy and happiness. You'll laugh a little, learn a little, and we hope put a smile on your face and a smile in your life. Now here's Laurie.
Hi everybody, this is Laurie Handlers, and you're listening to another episode of Sex and Happiness, a show about your sex and your happiness. Of course, my sex and my happiness is included in it. And so is my guest sex and happiness included in all of it. So today we're going to talk about soulmate to homemate. What does that mean? We're going to talk about how we go searching for another person to love in our lives, and maybe that's a fallacy. We're going to explore that. And my guest today is David Stone. Now, I just want to tell you that I've known David Stone for years. We met in London back in the day when I first was going to London and teaching. David showed up, and we've been in each other's lives ever since. We recently had a reconnection, and I asked him to come on the show and talk about this. Let me tell you a little bit about him. He's an awakening coach with a rich background in healing, Gestalt psychotherapy, breathwork, tantra, business success, and coaching. 3 key awakening experiences in life have helped him to see the role of the self and the self. So that's like self with a little s and self with a capital S, and how to create health, happiness, and success that comes from the inside out without compromising your sovereign wholeness. David, welcome to Sex and Happiness.
Thank you, Laurie. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And so clearly you've been looking at this stuff from soulmate to homemate. You've been looking at the little s self and the big S self for some time. Before we find out exactly what you're doing and how to move into, I guess, the sovereignty or the self-love that you and I are going to talk about, I want to ask a little bit about how you got here. Like, how did you get, what are the 3 awakening experiences, or how did you get to be who you are in the world? What made you do that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think the second awakening really was when just before I'd met you, actually, back in London I think it's about 17 years ago.
Yeah.
When we first bumped into each other.
I met you in 2000 or 2001, something like that, at the, I don't know, the new, whatever expo they were having in London at the time, in the horticultural halls or something.
That's right. And I'd had surgery. I'd just not long had surgery on an abscess. And it was right up my bum on the base of my spine.
Oh, my God.
And it was pretty serious. And I had this interesting sort of, in England, we always look to America for sort of radical surgeries. And I'd had this new type of surgery. And what they'd done is just left me cut open so that the abscess could leak out.
Oh, my God.
And it was really quite shocking and horrific. And, it really, I was 26. I was a high flyer. I had a huge job in the city. And I was into things like Reiki and, the sort of things that people come into when they're entering into spirituality or exploring themselves. And then suddenly I was like given this to deal with. Mm-hmm. And I flew out to America and did some work with a native Canadian shaman on his land, and did sweat lodges and cold river bathing and sleeping under the stars. And it really helped me to see how blocked my Kundalini channels were in my body. And during the sweat, my heart opened up. And in that opening, I could feel this profound resentment, this grudge, kind of just literally unfold like a tight fist. Yeah. And open up and leave. And really, that was such a big key in my expansion. It was a very old wound, a very old grudge. And it took the intensity of a 12-hour sweat to really push against it and to sort of locate that clench in the kind of invisible heart muscle, like the spirit muscle of the heart, in the kind of more expanded body in the field of my body, to really wake me up to how shut down I was, and to the sort of trapped psyche that goes on beneath the surface of our personalities, of my personality. To me, I had no idea about that being locked inside.
Right.
And that was very formative in my awakening, because I came back feeling massively expanded, and then everything cleared up, because it was the root of my Kundalini. So it was able to then trigger the start, and that was working with yourself and your partner at the time, to really start to clear my channels and own my body, but also my spine and my soft spine, my Kundalini channel. And to start to inhabit my body and clear out the legacy of everything that was stored there, that was just beneath the kind of the superficial psyche that I was kind of trying to address with therapy and coaching and counseling and Reiki. You just dig at the surface levels, but this really opened me up to the deeper understanding of what it means to kind of clear out the blockages.
That's an amazing situation. So your body actually informed you.
Well, I guess
when you look at it like that, when you had that abscess, which who knows how you even got it, but it's like it gave you a gift couched inside of a curse.
And that's it. And it's like, I just had no support at home, and I just started doing research on the internet. And this, bearing in mind, this was 2001. So there was no huge sort of, spiritual new age movement. It was just fledgling. And I found one of the few crystal healers in Canada, and she said, "Come over, I'll help you. And I was like, wow, really? And I just trusted and flew over. And before I knew it, she'd packed me off 10-hour drive to go and see a shaman. It was just incredible how when spirit wants you to meet with the deeper mysteries, it will take you there through these channels, through these people who hold the vibrational purity and the connection between the higher realms, where you can connect with that higher vibration of healing to kind of enable your body to shed, but whilst being grounded in the earth teachings, the earth wisdom of shamanism at the same time.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing. It's an amazing story. So you came back, and you were clearly, when I met you, you were more searching, like you weren't doing what you are now. You were searching.
Yes.
You were very open, and you were super trusting, which was awesome. All a wonderful combination for growth.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's been, what you just said, about 17 years, and you've established yourself really in a practice as a healer. And you've got yourself in Glastonbury now, which is like the center of a lot of things. Yes,
it's been a very winding journey. I think the first 6 years were training as a Gestalt psychotherapist. So getting a really good ethical sort of structure platform, so that you've got your integrity, your ethics, and understanding of all the sort of the sort of mechanics of what goes on in the psyche. So you've got that grounding to create a container, a safe container for then the more woo-woo aspects that came later.
That's so great. That's wonderful. So what is it that you're actually, so right now, do you see people individually, or do you do some group processes, or do you take people on retreats? What is it that you exactly do with people? And then in the next segment, we're going to get to this soulmate, homemate question.
Yeah. Well, I've combined the Gestalt training with a deeper shamanic, psychic, mediumship training. And then my latest work has been doing 3 years daily meditation with just entering into the body. So a real deeper embodiment, very Zen, and just really not looking for any trinkets, any spiritual highs, just really bedding into the body and using that platform of the earlier trainings to to sort of understand what all the phenomena are that arise, all the soul fragments, all the cords, attachments, contracts, all the things that mysteriously arise out of the body when you just bring full presence and an embodied awareness into it, in a very sort of safe and sacred space.
I love what you're saying. I just have to say to you, I love what you're saying, because I think the body gets a bad rap. I think people think that the body is for procreation and sex and, and food. And I think they forget that the body is their whole, like everything is housed in here. This is, the body is like, to me, it informs everything. I check in to see what my gut is feeling or what my heart is saying, or even like what my position that I'm sitting in or standing in is saying in any given moment. And mostly people don't even look at that. They just stay stuck in the mind.
Well, that's it exactly, Laurie, because you're body aware. So what you're saying though is you're kind of modeling body awareness. So as you start to notice your body and the posture and your breath around the posture, so if you're locked, if your stomach's tight, if you've got your legs crossed, if your nose suddenly becomes blocked, these are all tells. Like in poker, your body is constantly giving you messages. And, in our culture, in our society, in our education system, it really has denatured us from our animalistic sort of homing system for guidance. Because, like you say, we've locked into the mind as the sort of homing device of comfort, of home within ourselves. And that locks us down, and it causes us to kind of fragment off from this beautiful machine, this biological miracle that's the body, that has all the answers, but often is very pained because all the problems are locked into the body, ready to be unraveled, like I mentioned earlier with one of my personal kind of unravelings. And so it's a lot easier to stay in that kind of, for want of a better word, that matrix, that artificial world of the intellect and of the externalized world and all the shiny things, materialistic, orgasmic, power, the things that make us sort of reach outwards for completion, because they're so much more seductive. So, it's so easy we're so programmed to sort of reach outwards, to look outwards through the senses.
And we're shamed, but, we're programmed that way because, as we come up, we're shamed for touching our bodies. We're shamed for being too much in one way or another, and whatever it is, that's our excitement, our enthusiasm, the natural bubbling that comes out of the body from just being alive, just being thrilling to walk, to move, to run, to roll in the grass. And then, little by little, the culture puts its corrections on us and we get shamed for all these things. So the only thing we got left is to value the mind.
That's beautiful, Laurie. Yeah, I mean, what you're bringing in there, the shame and the kind of literally starts to strangulate the bubbling life force of a child. And that bubbling, Freud described it, he called it libidinal energy, that everything is basically in essence libido. And I didn't train as a Freudian analyst, but I worked with Pearls and the Gestalt method, and they believe everything is aggressing, not aggression, but biting into the environment. Like, so you're going to bite and you're going to chew, like a really rampant toddler. And like you say, as we get older, we get conditioned, we get shut down, we get shamed, we get packed down boxed into shoulds and rules and don't and no, way beyond what's healthy. And we lose that natural kind of libido, that natural kind of raw, emotive, instinctive, animalistic sort of aspect to ourselves. That's often, we then fantasize about in our soulmate, that they will somehow wake it up when we bump into them, and then suddenly it'll all unravel and it'll all come good.
All right, that's really good. That's a good place for us to take a break. like that whole introduction to looking for a soulmate who's going to tap us into our natural. You make me feel like a natural woman.
Oh yeah, baby, give it to me.
All right, good. So we're going to take a little break here. Everybody who's listening, if you just tuned in, you're listening to Sex and Happiness. I'm Laurie Handlers. I'm interviewing David Stone, and David has just described how he woke up. You know, his ass woke him up, and it's it's crazy to consider it like that, perhaps, and then actually it's not. Like he had a physical challenge, and it made him seek alternative healing, and that woke him up to his whole current, who he is, how he is in the world, and what he offers to other people. And yeah, it's a great wake up. However we wake up, it's a great wake up. And we're gonna move on in the next segment. When we come back, we're gonna talk about what this search for soulmate is. And I'm gonna say it's the small s self looking for something to complete us. And we're gonna shed some light on that whole thing. So please stay tuned. We're coming right back. Sexual healing. Did you ever stop to think that love is your birthright? That you don't need to earn it or prove it? You just need to live it. I'm personally inviting you to the path of true love, power, and freedom. If you're ready to enliven your soul through conscious sexuality and dive deeply into profound ritual that frees your heart, I'm inviting you to join us for the Spiritual Sexual Shamanic Experience. This is better known to most of you as the ISTA Level 1 training. I am regularly leading these courses along with a team of accomplished facilitators all around the world. As a matter of fact, these trainings have taken place in 34 countries. For information on when I'm leading, go to butterflyworkshops.com. Or for a full schedule, you can go to schooloftemplearts.org. Please consider this invitation seriously, because love and freedom are your natural state of being.
Are you wondering what book to read to jumpstart your life? Get the best from relationships? Attain the deepest feelings of intimacy? Do you want the best sex along with great happiness? Get your copy of Sex and Happiness, The Tantric Laws of Intimacy by Laurie Handlers right now. You'll learn how to make love in the unknown, take the performance anxiety and reaching a goal out of sex. You'll learn subtle ways of communication and really important practices to empower you when dealing with an intimate partner. You'll let go of blame and struggle. Doesn't this sound great? Sex and Happiness puts the innocence back into sex and gives Tantra the respect it deserves. Take charge of your life, physically, emotionally, and spiritually with Sex and Happiness by Laurie Handlers, only $19.99 paperback and $14.99 ebook. Order your copy today by going to butterflyworkshops.com. That's butterflyworkshops.com for your copy of Sex and Happiness.
If you're a woman who could use a little zest and zing in your arousal response, or maybe you know women or a woman who could use this, because many women say that their feelings of desire, arousal, and sexual satisfaction don't happen as naturally or as often as they'd like. So I want to tell you about Zestra, because Zestra was developed to meet this much-needed option for women. Zestra's safe and a patented blend of botanical oils and extracts, and it's created to help women have increased sexual sensations. Zestra comes in convenient single-dose personal packets. Each packet keeps the essential arousal oils and extracts free, fresh, and safe from light. And with application of Zestra, it starts to work within 3 to 5 minutes. And at about 10 minutes, there's something called the Zestra Rush. And that can last up to about 45 minutes. The great news is that Zestra can be used as frequently as you like during each sexual experience. Now, I'm somebody who believes that all women deserve sexual satisfaction. That's why I do this show, in case you hadn't noticed. So I believe that men and women deserve sexual satisfaction. So if you're a woman who isn't getting that kind of arousal response that you want, please call 877-426-8047. That's 877-426-8047. And please remember to say you heard about Zestra from Laurie Handlers on the Sex and Happiness Show.
We're back with Sex and Happiness. I'm Laurie Handlers. My guest today is David Stone. He's an awakening coach, and he has a rich background of Gestalt, psychotherapy, and breath work, and Tantra, and a whole bunch of other things. And basically, he works with people and meditating in on the body, dropping in. And so we're going to talk a little bit now about what it is what this soulmate, the drive to find another half, or whatever they say in the culture. It's crazy. But so David, talk about it. You're writing a book, yeah? Called
I am indeed, yeah.
And what's it called?
It's called The Soulmate Seduction, Finding Wholeness Within.
Okay, let's go. Tell me a little bit about that, because that sounds like a perfect book for our times.
Well, what started happening was with my clients, often in one-to-one, but also in groups, whatever's at the root of most problems, it comes down to our primary relationship with ourselves that gets projected onto our intimates. And the more I started to study this, the more it sort of started to reveal itself for what's really going on. And what I've discovered through my research and writing and studying what's going on in my own process and sort of years of working with clients in this area is that primarily we are biologically wired to commune and to mate and to come together with another. And we're literally flooded with chemicals to make us fall in love. And, it's a wondrous process. It overrides any logic, any reason, enough to make two sort of completely random people come together and either live, cohabit, or bring an offspring into the world and go through that massive trauma of life together, of trying to bring two lives into one. And when you look at the mechanism of marriage was never about love. Marriage was about security, status, annexing territory. It was about control. Look at women. Women in marriage were powerless. They had no citizenship. They had no writing votes. They had no access to money. And so when you look at the imbalance of the history of these chemicals that override someone, and yet what they then come into once they do come together, there's this kind of massive conflict that's kind of embedded in our genes, in our it's hardwired into us to combine going outside ourselves and mating and then getting into a really tangled mess.
Well, I love that you put the chemicals in there, because it's so like what you said earlier about it, you're into the science of it as well as whatever the spiritual parts of it are. So the chemicals override critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins. And then there's other stuff that I probably don't know how to pronounce. They're wired for the procreation of the species, and they will override anything. Like, if you see dogs going after a dog in heat, they'll jump a 10-foot fence. But people will do the same kind of thing. And people they don't have a heat period. Human beings are, can procreate at any time. So there's no particular like period before gestation. There's just like all the time those chemicals get released, and they make people crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm beyond, like, I never procreated. And I'm also, I also believe that I have this whole belief that people sold out in the way in terms of choosing procreation over immortality. Like, I feel like the same energy can be used to live forever. I'm not talking about spiritual immortality. I'm talking about physical. I feel, I believe that people could actually channel their energies to keep living, but they sell out all the time for the biology of procreation, or the fantasy of, even if they're not making a baby, they're making a relationship which becomes the baby.
Yes. I think you're spot on. I think you've used the word sell out, and I would use a similar word in terms of self-compromise. It's like we lose track of, and this is, backed up, verified with all my clients, even if they're in very strong relationships with partners, they still sell out and they compromise the one contract, the one thing they always owe to themselves, which is to be true to thine own self. Right. As Shakespeare said, if you're true to your own self, you can't really ever sell your partner out. If you're being true to your utmost innate knowing, because that will be in their ultimate best interest. Right. Maybe not immediately, and they won't thank you for half the things you might do and say, but ultimately what it does is it forges wholeness. So rather than being two half beings, like looking for their other half, it kickstarts a process, which is a gradual process. As you probably know, this doesn't happen overnight. No. Where you unfold all the ways you, your parents, your ancestors have compromised wholeness through no fault of their own, through trauma, through social conditioning, through all the traditions and habits and educational mores that have dominated humanity, like I'm saying, through marriage, which was not a healthy mechanism for
no.
It was very much about sacrifice and compromise on both sides. And I think as an evolving species, a lot of the work you do, you'll see that we're kind of unraveling a lot of this misinformation, this distorted understanding of what makes us human, about compromise, about selling out. And so we can become two whole people who then start to attract, or a whole person who starts to attract another whole person. So 1 + 1 starts to create 2, rather than 1 and 1 merge into 1. And then you're kind of both fighting over the same energy, because you've not individuated to create something outside of yourself, above and beyond yourself, that's healthy and sustainable.
Right. This is so good. It's so good to call out, to like actually call it out and say, the bill of goods that we've been sold, at least in Western culture. I don't know about other cultures so much. I know a lot about European and American and South American culture. I know about religion, selling people this bill of goods. And what we've been handed is really what you called before, the Matrix, just like the movie, The Matrix, where it's like we're stuck in this web, pleasing our parents, pleasing our peers, pleasing religion, pleasing whatever. I mean, I feel grateful that I stepped away from it very early. I just rebelled against the whole thing and said, no, I'm not going to do it. And it was very difficult. I mean, growing up, it was super difficult to say to my parents, I am not going to get married. And they were, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
I said, nothing. This is what's right with me. Like, I can't do it. I can't, it might be that I never met the person in my dreams, or whatever, but I realized that was like a Cinderella fantasy. I used to have a women's group. I have to tell you this. This is so funny. This just reminds me. In the 70s, I used to lead women's groups and men's groups. Like, the men that I knew in my life didn't have anyone they wanted to be the leader of their men's group. So I was.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It was such an honor and a privilege that they selected me to lead a men's support group. In my women's group, though, we used to sing the song from Cinderella, "Someday My Prince Will Come." I used to make all the women stand up and get into couples and then dance the waltz around the room singing "Someday My Prince Will Come." And then I used to say, okay, now stop it. You know, let it go. Get rid of it. You're your prince. You show up.
Yes. Well, it's like a sticking plaster. It's like you've got all this kind of literally rotting sort of, you know, distorted energy that goes on under the surface, like I had to find up my ass. And then what happens is society plasters over that this kind of fairy tale.
Right.
And it's cultured into us. It's in our archetypal nature to seek this missing part that's going to give us wholeness outside of ourselves. And it's not the truth.
Yeah.
It's literally painful. It's painful to start to dig in. And when you look at the Buddhist tradition, we look at Thich Nhat Hanh's explanation. He's got a video on YouTube called "There Is No Romantic Love." And basically, Buddhism just sees this beautiful way of looking at no attachment. It's this not selling out. It's not compromising.
Right.
Not imagining that soulmate love is going to rescue you. It's going to magically wave a wand and make everything better.
Yeah, it doesn't. It really doesn't. So how, you know, so this begs two questions. One is, so how do people find their capital S self?
Mm-hmm.
Two, then when they want to connect with another, how do they maintain their sovereignty so that they can actually love? Because loving feels good.
Mm.
Loving feels good, but not giving away what I said to you earlier before we got on our show. I said to you, you know, I feel people give away their whole nervous system to someone, and they expect that person to know what to do with it.
Oh, yeah, that's the ultimate self-betrayal, isn't it? But it's so easy done. Well, I think
give you my heart, you know, and they don't really give the heart. They give their they give everything. They give their whole decision-making, nervous system, chemistry, everything.
Well, I think one of the things I've learned from is how not to do it. Has been my role model almost through my training and my learning.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of the meditations and the healings I did, it disassociated me from my body. So I'd go out into the stratosphere, I'd go out into, you know, deep, erotic, orgasmic experiences, but not taking my body with me. So I desensitize, which would actually be another way of bypassing. It's very similar to maybe shopping too much, or being on drugs, or taking, you know, sugar to get over something painful, or having a drink rather than facing it. So really a lot of my formative experiences were actually misleading me. My spiritual training and some of my psychotherapy training weren't encouraging me to really embody. So one of the ways to actually find the bigger self with a capital S is actually in the mundanity of just starting to control your breath. So just say, I'm gonna breathe in for the count of 6. And then suddenly one isn't in that kind of autopilot where literally any emotion and any attribute can be running you. So you're at the mercy of everything that's ever happened to you and everything that's ever happened to your ancestors literally running you on autopilot.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts there. And then the second way that I find really useful with people is to start to notice the skin. Because your skin is like your biggest organ.
Yes.
And how much attention do you give to your biggest organ whilst you're in your body? It's literally like the wrapper that protects you. And, you know, historically it was what was responsible for our survival. And so starting to notice the skin on the body as you start to kind of control the breath means that you take control back from everything that you give it away to, or it's been given away to through your heritage and your conditioning. So that starts the process of connecting to the bigger self, because really then you're in your body, and then if you do have transcendental or bigger experiences, you can do it whilst clearing out any residues that are in the body, rather than just kind of riding, what do they call it, sort of ceiling surfing. Having these heightened spiritual, erotic, drug fuel, whatever it is, experiences, but without taking the body with you. It tends to deny you the opportunity to clear out the sort of the depths.
This is so good. And I mean, what you're saying, really you're making a case, I guess, for Tantra, because when people, in the beginning, when I first started teaching Tantra, and people would say, this is all it is. And I would say, yeah, breath, sound, and movement. It's not rocket science. It's been around for thousands of years. It's been around before we had rockets. And that's breath, sound, and movement is really all it takes to notice the body. Breath, sound, and movement is all it takes, is what you just said, to take back control of who you are as a sentient being, different from what you inherited, your DNA strand and everything else, all the crap that came in through the umbilical cord.
Absolutely. And it is because the ego, the mind, is so used to complexity. It almost literally, it's too easy.
Right. That's why they say, is this it? Is that all there is? This is Tantra? Yeah, it's so easy. The mind wants to like muck it up and complicate things and make it really into rocket science, and it isn't. It's simple. It's simple stuff. But the simple stuff will lead you home.
And that's it. It's like one of the things I learned in my Gestalt training is you go with the resistance, not against it. You don't try and cathart artificially and push against what's blocked. You work with what's blocked. So you invite it in, you welcome it in, you acknowledge it, you bring the breath and the focus into the body or the field where the distraction is, where the blockage is. So that begins the unknotting process, the sort of decompressing, the unraveling of the shame binds and the trauma locks and the trauma binds that have literally become armored into the erogenous zones, into the body, and in some cases into the spinal energy and the spinal cord, like in back problems. We are in a generation of back issues that was never the case 50 years ago, which is evidence that we're storing, and heart attacks and cancer, which is evidence that we're storing so much more because we've become so disassociated from our bodies and from nature and the environment.
Exactly. Wow. Well, this is so good. I think you and I could like go on and on, all day, but we're going to take it because this is like, this is my dance tune. But we're going to take another break here. When we come back, we're going to find out how people can get in touch with you, how, when the book is coming out, all of this, so that people can find you after listening to the show, if they want to find you. And I'm hoping that they do find you, because this is so relevant. It's just so important, and it's so important to sex and happiness. Like, really, if you want to be happy, you have to like focus on breathing for 6 counts. I mean, really, it's as simple as that.
It really is, Laurie, because if you were to just practice that as a result of listening to this interview, and to count to 6, pause on the inhale, count to 6, pause on the exhale through the mouth, and inhale through the nose, and notice your skin, your life would shift. I kid you not. Yeah.
So good. I got excited hearing that. All right. We're going to take a break. This is Laurie Handlers. This is Sex and Happiness. And I'm with David Stone. I'm having a great time. And, I hope you are too. I'm turned on by the conversation because it's about self-empowerment and sovereignty and how to embody yourself and not lose yourself. We're assuming that we've all lost ourselves for one reason or another, and for all the reasons we outlined. So we're saying reclaim yourself, capital S. Who are you, the bigger you, in this equation? So stay tuned. We're coming right back.
So many times you've heard Lori talk about emotional release on this show. She says over and over again how important it is for you and your loved ones. Now you can do emotional release in the privacy of your own home. And you can practice Latihan too, meditation that prepares you for making love in the unknown. In her CD, Shamanic Release and Latihan, she creates a safe and sacred space in which you can do the powerful work Lori is known for in her Butterfly Workshops courses. Lori sets you up with the proper positioning and breathing. Then she guides you through each emotional state to the beat of tribal African rhythms. This CD actually provides an easy way to do emotional clearing work on a regular basis. Order your copy of Shamanic Release and Latihan today and watch your relationships walk free of emotional baggage. To order your copy, go to butterflyworkshops.com right now.
As a sex and happiness coach, I understand that increased sexual participation intensifies sexual responsiveness and desire, as well as overall health and well-being. My experience with the Sybian has personally increased my sexual response, and I can now train women to use this machine to have peak orgasms as often as possible. I strongly believe this will add to their health and well-being whether they have a partner or not. The beauty and the miracle of the human body is that it adapts and changes much more rapidly than people change their beliefs or their opinions. The Sybian can make any woman's body more resilient with each peak orgasm. Sybian is an amazing experience, often described as the Lamborghini of sex toys. If you're a woman and you can get yourself to look at Sybian, you should do so. It won't take away from your partner. It will only add. Trust me on this. I love my Sybian. Go to Sybian.com. That's SYBIAN.com, or call 1-800-253-6135. That's 800-253-6135. And say Lori Handlers told you about Sybian. And by the way, if you do have a partner, ask about Venus for Men. That's Venus, VENUS, for men. Again, this is Sex and Happiness. I'm Lori Handlers, and I'm very thrilled with this show. I'm really excited with the conversation that I'm having with David Stone. David, you're so unwoo-woo.
I know.
It's great. So I take back anything I said before. I mean it. It's like you're like reaching into what I consider to be the basic mechanics of really person reclamation, individual reclamation, life enhancing, life enforcing practice. And I'm ecstatic about it. It makes me happy to hear. Really makes me happy to hear. So first of all, how soon will the book be out? When do you think it will be? Well, in 2019?
I was hoping to have it out on Valentine's Day as a bit of a kind of cosmic joke about sort of, the anti-soulmate book on Valentine's Day. But it's going to take a little longer to bring it out. So I think it'll come out later in the year. I'm hoping really by April.
Okay, great. But it's good to know. And it's like, maybe the best Valentine's gift at any time that we can give ourselves is our own sovereignty and our own individual process, our own being in love with ourselves, like self-love.
Yes, and self-love is an entrainment. So it's a little bit like entraining your presence into yourself. And as you entrain your presence into yourself, it literally pushes out anything that is not of itself, that is not love, that is not presence. And I discovered this when I was training in network spinal analysis by this great American guy who brought it to the world. And there's a few English chiropractors who've trained in network spinal. Is it Donnie Epstein? And basically when three people are getting a treatment simultaneously, the one with the most entrained spine, the spine that's got the greatest flow of energy moving through it, that spine will literally entrain the other two spines into wholeness, into the more refined S-curve of natural back health. And it's the same with self-love. So someone like yourself, Laurie, and the work you do, I'm sure when you're sitting with people, it naturally starts to entrain them into self-love, to release those parts of themselves they've been holding on to, often beneath their awareness, that then brings them into that wholeness, that self-sovereign place of love, feeling that love for themselves that just shows up when the crap leaves.
Yeah.
It's a simple physiological fact that if you remove the disease, our bodies know how to be love. They boom love when we remove the disease. They have a natural compass to orientate us to well-being.
That is so, I just learned the word entrainment. I want you to know, I learned it about 2 months ago. I never knew that word. And I've been using it ever since. Like there's a book out called The Power of Eight by Lynn McTaggart, and it's about how groups of 8 people come together and they focus on healing or they focus on something, and how their sheer energy and combining with the others, it can entrain and then produce like amazing results in a person's, whether it's their financial or their health or whatever it is. And I also found out when I found out about the word entrainment, I looked it up, of course, they said that you could put a whole bunch of grandfather clocks into a room together, and all the, I don't know what you call it, the pendulums in the clocks are all going different. But if you leave the room and you leave them in the same room together, let's say a dozen grandfather clocks, when you come back to the room, all the pendulums are swinging exactly the same.
Yes. And it's similar when a group of women live together. They all start to ovulate.
Yeah, they ovulate and menstruate at the same time. Yes.
And so in my sessions, that is what I start to do because of the focus I've taken, the care of this entrainment process. It starts to bring my clients into that sort of wholeness, and whatever is in the way with the safe sort of ethical, well-held space, it can start to release in a way that's really efficient, so that we don't have to really, take 20, 30, 40, 50 sessions. It can come out when it's ready. It can come out without any externally imposed sort of projected understanding of, how long that issue can release. So it could literally release in 1, 2, 3 sessions rather than, say, 20 years of psychotherapy. Really?
That's hurrah, because I don't believe in 20 or 30 years of psychotherapy. So I'm of the school of instant transformation.
Yeah. And it's allowing that transformation to come of its own accord, because if we push, then we can actually not allow the body to be in its own organic flow, its own organismic self-regulation. So a body that's self-regulating can take those leaps that you're talking about, but it needs to kind of gently come into them in its own pace, so that once it's had a big leap, it can naturally then integrate it back into itself.
It's great. I'm thrilled. Wonderful. Thank you. This is great. How can people get in touch with you, David, especially if they want to get in touch with this book and they want to see you? What's the best way to find you?
Great. Well, I have a website called embodiedsoulawakening.com, and I have resources on there that people can watch videos. I've interviewed, like yourself, many people on this embodied awakening process. So there's lots of freebies and meditations there. And then if someone wants a session, I do them by Skype and also in person. And this year I'll be bringing out groups, online groups, and hoping to have my first retreat later in the year.
That's wonderful, David. So there you should say the website again,
embodiedsoulawakening.com.
Okay, embodiedsoulawakening.com.
It's a bit of a mouthful.
Yeah, it's a big mouthful. It's like, but that's
but it
okay.
says what it does on the tin.
That's great. So, David, thank you so much for being my guest today. It has been such a pleasure talking to you and, reconnecting and finding out really what you're doing. And it's gorgeous. I mean, it's wonderful to hear the work and to know that people have you as a resource and they can tap into you from all over the world on Skype.
Thank you so much for having me, Laurie. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you.
You're welcome. Oh, wonderful. So everybody who is listening, first of all, thank you for being my listeners. I couldn't do this show without you. And I want to let you know that I want you to tune in next time when I'll have another guest. We'll be talking about the role that touch plays when we're healing from sexual trauma. And learning what actually we want. We talk a lot about, I've talked on the show a lot about boundaries and what we don't want, what we say no to, but what do we want? What do we want when we connect with somebody? And we're sovereign. So it's like, it's taking what David and I talked about today, and then how do we connect with someone and what do we want? So that's what we're going to be talking about on the next show. So please tune in to Sex and Happiness. I'm thrilled to do this, and really it's my honor and it's a pleasure. So thank you. This is Laurie Handlers signing off for Sex and Happiness.
Thank you for joining us today for Sex and Happiness. To learn more about Laurie and her work, please go to butterflyworkshops.com or follow her on Twitter or Facebook. You can send her an email at sexandhappiness@gmail.com. We'll see you again right here next week for another edition of Sex and Happiness.